Unseasonably warm temperatures, snowfall, and the tropics are the three main storylines in today's video. Welcome back, everyone, to Weather on the Go, all your weather coverage on this Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, we do a short-range forecast, long-range forecast, monthly and seasonal outlooks right here on this channel. So make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. We cover North America, Canada, and the United States. Like the video by giving it a thumbs up. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. We'll get to those all after the video. So let's look here at the GOES satellite imagery as of this Wednesday, October 2nd. And you notice a lot of the cloud cover and active weather has been further to the north as the jet stream is further north in Canada. And we have a lot of quieter weather across portions of the United States and Mexico here. For the most part, sun-splashed skies across portions of the lower 48. And that has actually led to some cooler temperatures. Clear skies last night. We saw temperatures into the upper 30s across the Illinois Valley, back up here into the mid 30s in northern lower Michigan. So a crisp start to the day today, but temperatures will be warming nicely into the 60s and 70s up there this afternoon. Whereas we have the 80s across the central and southern plains, and then the excessive heat back here into Southern California, into the Sacramento Valley, and even into portions of the Phoenix region, up over 100 degrees this afternoon. And we do have to look at the weather alerts because we do have excessive heat warnings across those areas, into the Phoenix region, back towards San Diego, heat advisories in the orange across the Sacramento Valley there, places like Fresno. And then we have red flag warnings across portions of the plains back into the Rockies, especially for Wyoming, parts of Montana, northeastern Colorado, South Dakota, Nebraska, keeping very close tabs on that because we have low relative humidity values across this region. And with dry fuels, that is actually going to cause for concern with breezy conditions, wind gusts that could be over 20, 30 miles per hour in this area. So elevated, if not critical, fire weather concerns across southeastern Wyoming as we go into this afternoon and this evening. And looking at the overall weather pattern, zooming it out for you here across North America for tomorrow on Thursday and the next day on Friday, the 4th of October, you can see we have that ridge of high pressure that's bringing all of that excessive heat across the desert Southwest. That will remain intact. And then the active storm track with our low pressure troughs further to the north into Alaska, into Canada, and the Arctic as we go through the next couple of days. So what that will do with our temperatures, unseasonable warmth is going to continue into early October here, especially for the Sacramento Valley out here out west in California, also through the Four Corners region and into the Plains states. And these are your temperatures as we go into tomorrow. Here's Thursday afternoon, middle 90s from portions of Wichita down into Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then triple digits again from central Southern California and into southwestern Arizona. And the same thing can be said as we go into Friday afternoon, although we do start to cool off across the Wichita areas as we are in the mid 90s tomorrow. Friday afternoon, we're back into the upper 70s and some lower 80s. And look at the northern tier up here of the United States, southern Canada as well. Temperatures for highs 40s, 50s, 60s, and some 70s mixed in there. Some nice, cool, refreshing air over the next 48 hours or so. So as we go through today, precipitation-wise, we do have low pressure. The storm track is further to the north up here into Canada. We actually see cold enough air into northern Canada for some snowfall, so definitely watching out for that. Very dry across the lower 48 and into northwestern Mexico as well. As we go through the day on Thursday, pretty dry as well. Can't rule out a couple of showers across the southeast coast, but the active storm track will remain further to the north. And then as we go into Friday, same thing, active storm track to the north, squeezing out some snowfall for British Columbia, up here into maybe Yukon, Northwest Territories as well, and then down into the lower 48 of the United States, pretty dry weather, maybe some unsettled weather near the southeast coast with the tropics on Friday. Here's the overall rainfall going through the weekend. This is going through Saturday, the October 5th time frame. Pretty dry across the central and western U.S. Pacific Northwest could have some showers. The eastern United States, especially the southeast coast, could see some showers out there, and then some rainfall up here into Canada as well. And a lot of this in higher elevations too could be squeezed out as snowfall. So the coastline there of British Columbia up toward the Gulf of Alaska, we could actually see those higher elevations squeezing out up to 4 feet of snow. Definitely keeping that in mind as well. And then going into the weekend, we have more of that zonal flow pretty much across the United States. We got that ridge out west, ridge extending further to the east, and that storm track remaining intact further to the north into Canada. So unseasonable warmth will continue into the weekend. It doesn't mean all areas will be, excessively hot, but when you're in early October, for example, and in Chicago, maybe your average high is in the 60s or low 70s, you could be in the upper 70s for the weekend and it'll be above average. So that is something to keep in mind. And as we go into Saturday afternoon, look at that. Chicago 72, 91 over here toward Topeka, 87 into the Kansas City area. So make sure to stay hydrated out there. Then as we go into Sunday afternoon, a little bit cooler of an air mass settles in across Chicago, 74 there, 78 in St. Louis, and 89 approaching the 90-degree mark in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and Shreveport, Louisiana for Sunday afternoon. Looking at precipitation this weekend, Saturday, again, the active storm track will remain to the north. Across Canada, we do have that squeezing out in the form of rain, but also some higher elevation snows from Alaska down into Yukon, western Northwest Territories region into British Columbia, so we'll be keeping an eye on that. And then tropical moisture down near the Gulf Coast and into Florida, and that will largely continue on Sunday, although it looks like a pretty wet day for Sunday across southeastern Canada with a stronger low, 983 millibars. Pretty wet day there for eastern Manitoba, northwestern Ontario, and western Quebec as we go into that time frame. That could squeeze out maybe an inch or so of rain. A lot of the rainfall is off the Gulf Coast as we go through the weekend, and then the heavier snows lining up from portions of the Alaska coastline all the way down into northwestern British Columbia, into southern Yukon, where we could see up to 50 inches of additional snowfall. That's on top of the snow we see the next 2 days, and then we're going to be adding onto those totals for the weekend here in those higher elevations especially. Going into next week, if Monday, October 7th through Friday, October 11th, that ridge that's out west is going to amplify a little bit and start to cause a little bit of a blocking regime across North America with the trough over here into the Gulf of Alaska. And then we have another trough elongating over here from Nova Scotia and into the North Atlantic Ocean. And what that's going to do is create more areas seeing unseasonable warmth as we go into next week, especially for the western and central 2/3 of the United States and southern Canada, whereas the trough out east in toward Nova Scotia and the North Atlantic will influence some cooler air across the eastern United States next week as a whole. And it does look pretty dry across most of North America outside of the western coastline there of Canada, along western British Columbia up toward the Gulf of Alaska, and very wet actually down in the Sunshine State of Florida, as we could be adding up several inches of rainfall down here, and some areas could be seeing up to, unfortunately, a foot or more of rain in central and southern Florida for the Tampa Bay area, for Orlando, for areas in Naples and Fort Myers, all the way down to Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and the Keys as well. So we'll be keeping a very close eye on that. Snowfall going to be continuing to add up in a big way in those higher elevations, up into the Arctic, up into the higher elevations of Alaska, into Yukon, Northwest Territories, into northwestern British Columbia especially. Could be adding on again another 40, 50 inches of snow during that 5-day period next week. So that snowpack will continue to grow as we get closer toward the actual cold season and the winter. Turning over to the tropical weather update, we do have tropical storm, or actually Hurricane Kirk down here into the main development region. That is going to curve out to sea as a major hurricane developing over the next 12 hours or so, and it will remain a hurricane out here in the open waters as a fish storm here early next week as well. And we're keeping an eye on an area of interest that the National Hurricane Center has highlighted here across the Gulf of Mexico near the Yucatan Peninsula and the Western Caribbean that has a 40% chance of development. Now, with Helene making landfall, it did upwell some cooler waters from the bottom of the from below the surface up to the surface of the ocean. So there is a little bit of cooler water mixing in here, but there is a lot of warm water still as well. So looking at the ensemble members from the European ensemble guidance this weekend, some weaker members trying to get this into a tropical system, maybe a tropical depression or a weak tropical storm. And then if not, early next week, maybe some more development near the Florida Peninsula and over there toward the western Bahamas as a tropical depression or maybe a weaker tropical storm. But nonetheless, this is likely to bring us a lot of pretty heavy rainfall. Again, this is what we see for Florida, and that's the influence of that, is why we're seeing all the heavy rain. That tropical depression or tropical storm that may form could be dropping a lot of rainfall here across central and southern Florida. Again, that could be over a foot in some areas, so we'll keep a very close eye on that into next week. Thank y'all for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Short range forecasts, long range forecasts, monthly and seasonal outlooks here on the channel. We do cover North America, Canada, the United States, and sometimes Mexico as well. Make sure to like the video, give it a thumbs up down below. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. We'll always get to those after my videos, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their Wednesday out there.